welcome to Terminal Velocity Limited. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew.
And I'm Scott.
And this week we're going to torture ourselves a little bit.
Spoiler.
We're going to tackle Frank Miller and John Romita Jr.'s Superman Year One, Book One, part of the new DC initiative, DC Black Label.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say right off the bat, you know what you're getting into right from the cover.
Yeah. So before we do that, this is the limited edition that we do for our podcast. So this is the one where we're tackling stories that are more recent as they're being released. So these will be miniseries that are coming out or maxi series that we're going to be doing at least a single issue on to see what our opinions are on it. And after that, we'll give our ratings and whether we're going to continue reading it. So if we do, then you'll see more episodes. If you don't, then there will be singular launch episodes for the titles. But yeah, you're right. Like, I think I don't even know how to necessarily get into this one because the story is a little bit all over the place.
But Scott, this is iconic and a definitive introduction to the character, just like the All-Star Batman and Robin initiative. It's taking the iconic stories and I can't even finish that sentence.
No, but you're right. This is supposed to be this was to get to the heart of who is Superman and kind of what makes him the hero that he is. Based on the first
hold the phone there, Scott. It's not to show what the hero he is. It's supposed to be the government puppet. This is in the same continuity as Dark Knight Returns, where Superman is a government patsy.
A government patsy, so he's still the big blue Boy Scout. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. So it starts off. It's a 67 page. That's what it was digitally when I was reading it.
Really, I thought it was 180.
It felt that way, but it was only 67 pages, and it's in the same Batman Damned kind of magazine kind of format.
And if you know me, that's already strike one.
Yeah, which I'm not a fan of. I don't know why they went for that. It makes it extremely difficult to read in digital. And I wasn't a big fan of it in the print. So yeah, take that for what it's worth. Take that as a warning, if you will, or take it as a positive if that's the kind of thing you're into.
Well, I'm a little confused with DC Black Label because Black. What was that first one called? Batman Penis?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
Bat Dong?
The Bat Dong, yeah. In widescreen. Yeah, like I thought okay, so I thought they were doing the magazine format, but then they released Last Night on Earth in its prestige format.
Mm-hmm.
But then now this one is going back to this magazine format. I'm a little confused, like what the label even means.
Well, the label itself has nothing to do with the print format. The label itself is just kind of Elseworlds tales, right? They're stories that are outside of continuity, that don't necessarily relate to the existing or ongoing DCU continuity. So I agree with you. They need to kind of decide on what format they're actually going to go with, but I'm less concerned with the format and more with the quality of what's coming out so far, because of the three titles we just talked about, only one of them I'm actually interested in reading, and that's jumping ahead for a spoiler. But Last Night on Earth is really the only one that really spoke to me. So let's just get into it. We'll try and do a quick synopsis on this one. It's basically retelling Krypton's destruction through the eyes of baby Kal-El. as he's rushed omnisciently, I guess, through some of this
Well,
into his
Kryptonian babies mature mentally at 2 months old.
apparently. So he gets squirreled away, thrown into his dad's ship in his sterile lab, which he comments on the smells and everything in the lab. Sees his parents basically burned to cinders in front of him as the planet explodes, and then is educated in his capsule as he's traveling through space until he finds the beautiful little blue marble that is planet Earth. Crash lands on Earth, as we all know, is found by Pa Kent, but not Ma and Pa at the same time. It's just Pa at this point. It's just Jonathan finds him and then has a psychic bonding moment with baby Kal-El. And it was at this...
You heard that right, reader or listeners, that it's Kryptonians are also psychic babies.
Yes. It was at this point where I really sat back and said, what the fuck am I reading? Where he has this, Jonathan picks up Kal-El, recognizes the fact that the kid weighs an absolute ton, even though it's just still a toddler, and then feels a warmth inside his brain. And I guess at that point it was like a Vulcan mind meld. I don't know. But they're all perfectly okay, and little Kal-El knows that he's going to be safe, and Jonathan knows that he'll look after this kid and takes him back to the farm, and this is when he gets adopted. It's kind of a hodgepodge of a story after this. It's really telling him, it's giving you little hints of powers that he kind of has, like he's able to jump really high and obviously run really fast, and he's obviously super, super strong. And I think it was supposed to come across as a little bit more fun than it actually is in the story, but it left me, there's a whole bunch of times where I just ended up getting confused. One of them you and I talked about is when Clark is getting fed hot oatmeal, and for some reason it burns his mouth, so he decides to burn the kitchen with his heat vision.
Yeah. To show her.
Yeah, to show her what the hot feels like.
So, like, at this point, I thought I was reading an adaptation of Brightburn. Because I was like, what's happening in this book? Yeah, he's super strong and everything, and, he's able to support that humongous oversized head on his shoulders.
His head literally the size of his torso.
But the oatmeal's too hot and it's green for some reason. I thought that was interesting. Green oatmeal. I guess that's what they serve in the Midwest. I don't know. But then again, I thought this was I thought Smallville was actually Sin City based on how it's written. But I'm jumping ahead there. Story-wise, Clark goes to sleep and he has dreams of nothing holding him back, and he can fly.
Now
like
there
Peter
was
Pan.
Yeah, and there's one point where there's one page that I did kind of like, and it's more like when he relaxes himself and he's falling asleep, and then all of the sounds around him are so loud that they're keeping him awake and he has a hard time. Mm-hmm. This is also when he's sweating, which is a strange thing to be seeing on Superman, but he's sweating in bed. But that was one point where I was like, okay, they are trying really hard to show that his powers are evolving and growing with him. It just doesn't necessarily land all that well. Taking him from a toddler to just a small child, and then just jumps just straight into high school. No other development needed. It's just straight into high school, because high school is what's going to make him the man that he is. And this is where we get into the more, as you say, Sin City aspect of things, where there's high school delinquents and then there's high school deviants, and this high school seems to be filled with a great many deviants who are, out to not only beat up and bully other kids, but rape kids and
we
just
got
completely brutalize
Well,
people.
it's like the color like is so like devoid in a lot of this book. It's got to do the dark and gritty. Um, where like Superman or sorry Clark Kent hangs out with all like the I guess the misfits, but then in some panels they look like they're supposed to be like grade 8, like they're so tiny.
Yeah. I had a
And
hard
then
time with it. It's you can't really tell. I was like, oh, is this a junior high school or an actual high school? Are they driving age? Are they not? Like, and again, why is everybody's head so big in comparison to the rest of their body?
one thing I've got to say about this book so far and the writing, which is what made it really hard for me, is kind of like I think he's going for like a poetic stream of consciousness style of writing, but it's just I don't know. How do I say this? It was like torture.
The internal monologue that Clark has through the entire story, um, the vocabulary doesn't change at all. So as he matures, it's stayed the same as when he was a small baby, which is extremely off-putting because as a small baby, it's talking like he's already an adult.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that like his internal monologue is so juvenile the entire way through. It's actually too advanced for where he should be, kind of emotionally and mentally. So it's very difficult to read because it's very off-putting. And I know that Frank Miller, like as we've read them in Batman's Year One, as we read him in Dark Knight Returns, through all of his Daredevil stuff, we know he's a prose writer. So you get like you're not going to sit down and read a Frank Miller book and think, oh, I'm not going to have a lot to read in here, and this is as dense could possibly be. And I think that's kind of really what you're getting at is just that there is so much to kind of dig into, and it doesn't have Superman's voice. I think is the other challenging thing.
Yeah, like you'd almost think you were like no, I can't even say it's like you're listening to Bruce Wayne talk because it's not.
No, it's not Bruce.
It's just a very strange interpretation of Superman, and yet it's not consistent with the Superman we've seen in the world that this supposedly takes place in.
Yeah.
And then there's an attempt to write some of the characters with like kind of the Midwestern accents and slangs, and then some people, and then the others just talk normally.
Yeah.
Then we have the gang of bullies that even like the police are scared of, and they just keep escalating, and like Clark is trying to decide like how he can stop this because he's got powers, but his parents don't want him to be a show off, which didn't quite follow their line of thinking, especially with the way this gang of kids are conducting themselves.
Yeah.
And then then we get, I guess like one of the main bullies tries to like Clark goes to try and talk to them, trying to say lay off everyone, and then they try to fight him, so he just kind of flings them away because they literally can't do anything to him. But then this earns one. I guess the first sociopath gets detention, and then Clark gets janitor duty, which I don't think they can really do in schools nowadays.
Yeah.
It might upset the union. Yeah, and then oh my god, like the proportions again. Like there's a scene here where they're washing dishes, and Clark actually looks like he's got relatively decent proportions, but Pa Kent looks like he's half the size of Ma Kent, who's sitting.
Yeah.
She looks like she would tower over him.
Yeah, so let's tear through the synopsis, and then we can get to nitpicking some other stuff, I think, because
I just don't want to go back to it.
I know you don't, but I think we're gonna have to. So basically, what ends up happening from here is that Clark has the internal struggle of what to do about these bullies because they keep picking on his friends, And then at one point, they end up trying to, I think, basically gang rape Lana Lang.
We're not even
So
there yet. So like
I'm tearing
basically,
through it faster
well,
to get us.
because of Clark's intervention before the bullies attack on everybody escalates to physical beatings. So
Mhm.
like it's like they're all like battered and like bruised and like to the point of like illegal assaults. Like one guy's got bloody nose, guy's got a swollen black eye, looks like he could lose his eye from that kind of swelling.
Yeah.
So Lana comes up with approaches Clark. So this is the first time we're really seeing them interact at all, but apparently she's like, I got the pictures. Meet me at my house at 8. But of course, this little goth guy is, I guess, a spy for Markham and his gangs. And so, Clark rushes off that day to go meet Lana. And then we cut to a scene of Lana being hailed by somebody sort of dressed like what Clark was wearing, but in silhouette. So we know something's a mess here. And even Lana's like, oh, that doesn't really sound like him. So the voice is a little husky. Maybe he's got a cold. So she rushes out to meet him out just outside her property line. And that's when we get to the part you were referring to,
Mhm.
where the three of the kids are like, we're gonna make these pictures go away, and it devolves very rapidly into kind of a Sin City Frank Miller book where
Yeah.
women are pretty much just battered and abused, and
The line is literally, "We're done with business now because I've taken the pictures off her. Now it's time for pleasure." And they,
that was when I texted you. I stopped and I texted you, fuck this book.
yeah. And then they push her down and are basically going to start assaulting her. And then Clark shows up and just basically just throws them all around. Doesn't punch them, just throws them. But they all end up with gigantic bloody faces as Clark and Lana just fly away. And when I say like giant bloody faces, I mean these guys are bleeding profusely
It's like
and are
Red Lantern.
hemorrhaging.
It's like Red Lantern blood spewing out of their faces.
Yeah, like these guys need to get to a hospital pretty quickly, or they're going to
But
get really lightheaded soon.
well, what I thought was weird was that, Lana's like, take me home. I need you to take me home. And up and away, and he flies away. But like they were just outside her property line.
Yeah, they were they were just basically at the end of her driveway, which I know in the country can be a fair distance, but it just seems really strange. It's the inconsistencies that we continue to have in the book. And then, so yeah, he saves her. They have this nice moment where he just drops her on her roof and then flies away home. And then they continue to have a relationship at school where he ends up reading a whole bunch of books in the library.
He saves her from a sexual assault and earns a girlfriend.
Yeah. And then it's all about them bonding and kissing and him trying to decide what he's going to do when he finally is old enough, interspersed with him actually playing football and showing off some of his powers, which I thought would be a bigger moment, but it really wasn't. He just ends up scoring a touchdown as the rest of a team literally is trying to pile on top of him to stop him, and it obviously does nothing. And then as the biggest surprise to the end of this whole story is Clark decides that he's going to go, now that he's graduating high school, he's actually going to go and see the world, not in the typical traveling way as we've seen in other Superman stories, but by joining the Navy. Yeah. I'll let that resonate with people for a minute. He joins the Navy.
In the Navy. He's going to sail the 7 seas. I
And that's basically how the book 1 ends.
Well, whoa, Scott, you're forgetting. Ma packs his Superman blankie into the back of his backpack.
Yes,
because he might need that. He might need it.
Yeah, he hasn't needed it his entire life, but he might need it now.
It's the first time we're seeing it since he was an infant, found in his Messiah garb.
Right. I did like
mentally
the
raping
throwaway
Jonathan Kent to take him home.
I did like the throwaway dialogue that, it broke 3 of her sewing machines and Pa Kent had to get into the garage to use some of his tools in order to actually do something with the fabric. because I guess even the tensile strength of Kryptonian clothing is impacted by Earth's yellow sun.
In fairness to Miller, that was kind of a thing in the past. Although
I
it's
know.
more, it was like John Byrne kind of made it an aura surrounding Superman. That's why his costume didn't get damaged. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
So then we have a lot of internal monologue about Clark basically talking about becoming, basically like his like internal thinking about joining the military, and he's reading stories and how he can hear, he thinks he hears Lana, and then he's like, wait, no, it is her. I can hear her. She's singing and she's calling his name, but she's so far away. And then he's like, maybe I could see her, and
if I just focus, and
so
sure enough, he does.
He does, and she's sitting on her rooftop for some reason, with a letter that says, "I love you and I miss you," which I guess she knew he had telescopic vision before he did.
I guess so. There's a lot in this book that makes very little sense. And I think now that we've gotten to the end of it, that is the synopsis. As you can tell, neither one of us were too impressed with the overall story.
Well, he arrived at the naval base and he's excited for adventure. Clark Kent is ready. End of part 1.
Yeah. So that was the story. Now let's talk about the art. And this is where it gets even more troublesome for me. I will start off by saying I can't draw worth a damn. And so the fact that any of this happens, and this isn't to say that everything in this book doesn't look great. Romita is clearly really good at drawing some backgrounds. He draws, the panels themselves are filled with a good amount of detail. It's his people that I've never been able to handle, and it's the proportions on the people that don't make sense.
Before this book, I thought I didn't like his 90s stuff and his 80s stuff, but I'd rather that.
Yeah, I would much rather that. Like I say, it's his people that don't make sense. Like as you're going through, he draws a perfectly good truck. He draws great fields and trees, and the Kent farm looks fantastic. There's some great coloring.
Doesn't look fantastic was Krypton.
No, Krypton
looks very flat. Like it looks like if you cut out like construction paper and made like a cityscape. There's no real depth to it.
Yeah.
It's just like nonsensical shapes, almost like blades almost, but
yeah, it's an attempt at it, and this sounds really stupid talking about a 2D medium, but everything looks extremely 2D. Like there is no, as you say, there's no depth. There's no even attempt at trying to make them look like they have any kind of depth or width to the buildings. Everything is just literally, like you say, blades. So when everything starts to collapse, you're just like, okay, it's just glass.
Yeah, like
hollow glass.
I kind of miss the Crystal Fortress. I know it's it's dated. It's the 70s, but
I think they were going for that in this, though. I think that's what he was trying to do, was show some kind of crystalline structures.
That didn't come across.
It just it doesn't work right. It doesn't work right. Yeah, I don't think we need to labor the point too much. Needless to say, I don't think either of us are a fan of the art in here.
And I don't think it's his finest work. And like I said, I think Romita Jr. is an acquired taste, and like there have been times where I've liked his style with certain books. This is definitely not one of them. Like I don't know if he was experimenting here or if he had direction, but I just found it to be really off.
I'm really torn on it because
like in this page, like Pa Kent's got like a baby hand on one hand and then a gigantic like gorilla fist on the other.
Yeah, there's things like that, but you've got like shots of them driving up the driveway to the Kent farm, and the truck looks fantastic and the farm looks amazing. And, all the blades of grass look really well done. And I know a lot of this comes down to some of the inking and the coloring as well in here. Even shots inside the kitchen look really, really good. And there's obviously a lot of effort was put in, but it's the anatomy of the people that it just doesn't seem right. Things are just off on in this
Well, I
book.
think the most off-putting was just the gigantic baby head, like on
Yes.
Child Clark. It's just like his head is bigger than his torso.
It's comically large. Like the
Like you'd
panels
think he
where
was a fifth dimensional imp or something. Like
that's exactly what it is. It is like a basketball on a toothpick. It is absolutely enormous. In the scene where we've already talked about the porridge, or I guess that was maybe broccoli, although they're talking about
oatmeal. Like
oatmeal,
she says oatmeal, but it's all green.
and it looks like a stalk of, okay, whatever. This is the kind of thing. It's inconsistent. It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, his head. I just find his head so off-putting in so much of this. Having had small kids myself, I know children have large heads for their bodies.
Do you think John Romita Jr. drew the book first and then Frank just threw boxes in afterwards? Because maybe he saw like the black and white panels and it looked like oatmeal to him, but he was going for broccoli.
I don't know. I have no idea.
As much as I'm griping about the art, I just could not stand the writing. And
it doesn't help it.
Let me disclose. I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of The Dark Knight Returns. I get its value and importance in the history of Batman and DC Comics and comics in general, but it just never really resonated with me. But I always loved his year one. It's one of the seminal Batman stories that I'll always go back to.
Mm-hmm. And by all means, go back to our thoughts and opinions on it in our feed. we gush a lot about how much we enjoyed that book and how great the writing was.
It's just, I think ever since he wrote Sin City, and then it's never come back. I found like it's just. I mean, I was around for All-Star Batman and Robin too, and that was a travesty as well.
Yeah, I couldn't bring myself to read that one.
So anytime something's in the continuity of the Dark Knight Returns, it already kind of loses me there. That being said, I tried to give this one a shot, and within pages, I knew this wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Now, that's to say that there isn't anything to enjoy here. Like I said, there's like a page or two here that's kind of interesting.
I think that this book would work better if it wasn't Superman. If this was just a story of some kid with powers who was going to do something. I think the fact that they're labeling this as being a Superman story is what really hurts it. I think if like I say, if this was to come out that it was just a child that, or a child that lands on Earth and he's got some kind of superhuman powers, and this is kind of him kind of growing up, I think it would be a much easier book to swallow. But because we're reading it and we're thinking, okay, that is not the voice of Superman. That is not something Clark Kent would do. This is not, this is not Ma and Pa Kent. This is not Lana Lang. This is not Smallville. It's just, I think that's what the real hindrance is, just that this isn't the character we were thinking it would be. And I agree with you. There's way too much stream of consciousness going on in the writing.
Not everything you think is profound.
Exactly.
But I have one last point to say, and then that's all I'm really going to say about it. Oh my gosh, and I think I just lost my thought.
That's okay.
Yes, I just remembered. So there's so much writing and so many pages, and yet I feel like every single character is underwritten
Yeah.
There's nothing, like, I feel like I still don't. There was just a bunch of talking heads. I don't really feel like I got a grip on who anyone is or what their real personality is like, or anything that makes them any different from each other than a few attempts at some southern twang kind of accent. I don't know.
Pete
And
Ross was in it for 2 panels.
he's mentioned by name just as like a little cameo about him being bullied because his homework got soaked with water,
Yeah.
and then we never see him again. Um, just no one, like, there's nothing in this for me to grip onto. Like, I just, and then again, Superman's iconic. Everyone knows his origin. This project in itself is at fault from its concept. Like, there's no need to really kind of go back here yet.
Yep.
Like, we
Yeah,
don't
this
even
has
have the
been
definitive Superman for the current, like, New 52 / Rebirth era. Like, it's like, it's ill-conceived. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I don't know who the target audience was. I don't know why this was the project. They're like, Frank, we need you back. This is what we need you to do. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. It's not having.
Especially Superman. I don't think, hey, get Frank Miller to write Superman.
No, and especially after we have just read Batman Year One, where, you could see how he could do a Year One story for somebody. I don't understand why this Year One is really Superman origin. It's not Year One. So I think it's a misnomer to call the book Year One when it's not, in fact, that at all to begin with. This is just a retelling of another origin.
Well, it sounds like we're going to get the 12 labors of Hercules in the next issue.
Yeah. Well, that's
sad
probably
to say. I think it's time to give our review, our score, Scott, because I don't want this episode running longer and making people think we enjoyed it.
Okay. I give this a 1 out of 5.
Oh, okay.
And I know that feels high, but there are some small moments, like I say, in it where there's some interesting ideas of what's on the go. And I'm a sucker for a Superman story, but this had too many parts where it fell off. You know what? No, I'm giving it a 0.5 out of 5. Just because there wasn't enough of the true Clark Kent Superman moments for it to ring through. And the art really holds it back.
Yeah. I'm going to be straight up. I give this 1 basketball head Kryptonian child out of 5.
Okay. So I guess, are we going to be sticking with this, and are we going to be producing another Terminal Velocity Limited based on Superman Year One?
If that episode exists, it died with Krypton.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. Unfortunately, I don't think that'll ever see the light of Earth's yellow sun.
I'll give Rogolzar a call.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Well, if you have any thoughts or opinions that you want to share with us about your opinion on the book, send us an email at terminalvelocitypodcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment and a rating on your podcatcher of choice. That's another great way to get in touch with us.
You can also follow us at Comics Terminal on Twitter and Terminal Velocity Comic Book Podcast on all the other social media outlets. Let us know what you think of the dark and gritty world of Frank Miller.
Mm-hmm. And until next time, we will talk to you on Sunday during our regular recording of the Terminal Velocity Comic Book Podcast.
Take care.
Bye.